This is my cat Hank, and this is our mapping session. So I know all of us have experienced the pandemic in our own unique ways. So I'll tell you about my story. In 2020, I was in Hong Kong. I was based there for a job. I've been there for a few years. And it hit us first. So I remember it was January of 2020 when we were on a Chinese New Year break. And we got emails from work saying we were not going to return to the office. And that was very new to me. We were told we would be given equipment. We were given budget to stay at home and work from our homes. And at that time, we didn't really realize how bad it was going to get. It was just this strange, weird thing of like, wear your mask, stay at home. It could be another SARS. And at that point, I had this understanding that Hong Kong was, more aware of like how SARS was so bad in that city. So I thought, okay, they're just trying to be very careful. But so at that time, there was a storm and we were preparing for it. But before 2020, 2019 was already a century of a year in Hong Kong. So a lot of you probably know that 2019, we had the Hong Kong protests that started in March and lasted forever. And I work as a journalist, and on the ground, we had to cover what was happening. And aside from being a journalist, as a person who lived there, you had to be very aware of, where should you go? Where are there tear gas being fired and all these things. So that was already like a very long year, work-wise, and like trying to navigate life while all of these, things were happening. And it was an important part of of the society, of what was happening in Hong Kong. Like, I'm not trying to play that down, but like on a personal level and on a work level, it was a bit of a challenge. And then comes 2020. When you're used to like going to the office every day, seeing your peers, working from your desk, and suddenly everything is on Zoom, everything is on Slack, and everyone's wearing masks. And I didn't realize how much of a toll that was gonna hit me because I'm an introvert. Might not be very obvious, but I kind of like my own company. So I thought I will be okay. I can stay home. I'm with my cat. I'm good, I had access to trails. I had access to the necessities. But boy, I was wrong. And this started the search for what can I do to keep me sane. So I dusted off my sketchbooks and took out my favorite pens and just sat on the floor and decided, like, maybe I should sketch. Maybe I should doodle. And that's when I think by accident merged two things that I love the most. I've always doodled on anything I can get my hands on. I'm not the best artist. I just like drawing things. Like, it helps me process information. And I love maps. And I felt like at that time, I needed something to make me happy. And I've never really done hand-drawn maps before because I didn't do that in school. I didn't do that for work. So it was totally like a new, exciting venture for me. And that might sound strange for a lot of you, like do hand-drawn maps all the time. But last year, this was just so new to me. So I decided, okay, gonna sit down, do maps, doodle. And how did this simple act of like sitting down, doing maps by hand, and making patterns on paper help me get through the last couple of years? And it's still helping me out. I have 5 points to share. So mapping grounded me to the here and now. What I noticed during the pandemic was we couldn't leave. So my attention personally was like, I want to go see my parents. Like, I want to fly out of Hong Kong. I want to see my friends. I want to travel. So there was like what's happening here? And for me, like making the maps and drawing where I lived just kind of reminded me, like, you're in Lama, you're here now, like, be here, appreciate it. And that's where the first hand-drawn map came from. This is Llama Island. This was my home in Hong Kong for 5 years. And then after doing that, I decided, why not map Hong Kong? So it was like a reminder to myself that you're here now, appreciate that, and live that present. Next was making and sharing my maps gave me a sense of community even in isolation. And I think that was one thing that was hard on all of us, that sense of community. We suddenly lost it and everything was online. And we had to make the most out of that online community that we had. And I got really lucky because I had that support of the community, like the mapping community. And Topi was one of the first ones who saw my maps, and he was like, oh, you know what? I can make this a QGIS style so people can, pick it up and use it. And that might sound very simple for most, but for me, that was like a highlight of my year. Like somebody appreciated the maps that I worked on. People actually want to use it. And that actually had a great impact on my mental health. It's like, oh, now there's light. Like people want to do nice things. People want to share, and people are supportive. And I saw a lot of people using it, and that gave me hope, in a very dark time. Mapping was also familiar at a very unfamiliar, uncertain time, and that provided comfort. I think at the end of the day, I have learned to appreciate like what and who are familiar. We all appreciate home, our families, what we have, our spaces. And mapping was that for me. Like I know mapping is always there. My maps are there. I could just sit down and like map what's in my head, and it's familiar. And my cat too. He's a tough crowd to please, but also, my numbers are messed up, but mapping helped me focus on good memories. So one of the best memories I've had before the lockdown was Tacoma, when we were there, because that was like the last time I saw people and interacted and made friends. So I was conscious enough on some days that, what are my happy memories? Where was I last? So I started mapping those. DC is one of my favorite cities, and I was like, I'm going to write you down on paper. I can't travel. I'll just map. So now I have like a bunch of maps in my library of places that either I miss because they're my favorite or places that I really want to visit. And this is the most ambitious one, I think, which happened when I moved jobs. So I was one of the crazy ones who changed jobs during the pandemic. I used to work for Bloomberg in Hong Kong, and then I moved for a different organization in DC. And moving countries and moving jobs in the middle of the pandemic was a challenge, kind of still is, but we make the best out of it. So when that happened, I decided I'm going to map my memories while they were fresh. Before I left Hong Kong, I decided I'm going to make maps of the place that I've called home for the last 5 years. This, I have not shared some of them yet. They're not the best. I've never done watercolor maps before, but these are very relaxing to do, and they're also very personal and very raw. So this, I just want to share, like, where did I live? Where did I work? And like all of the little places that I loved when I lived there. And again, I'm trying to write about them, but because they're raw and very personal, I have to be in the best, state of mind to be able to share them. But I would love people to appreciate like a place through my maps and my memories. And hopefully I get to achieve that by sharing these little things, like my favorite park, like where did I hang out, favorite noodle resto in Hong Kong. And then yeah, so this is like the park that I would go to when work gets really stressful. And then this was my home with the dogs, the stray dogs that we would feed every day, and the ferry that I would take to and from work. So, like, these maps capture my feelings and my life, and I'm trying to preserve them. A few more. Yeah, so these are like all Hong Kong for now, and I'm trying to make it a series on my blog, and I'm calling them Mapping My Memories. And I've published one in May, but I haven't really followed through because it's been hard writing down. It's like maps are easier because you don't have to put things into words. Like you use colors, you use your strokes to actually capture that feeling, but the words that come with them are a bit hard, especially at this time. So I think the short of it really is, mapping kept me sane. Mapping was there when I couldn't really access people. We couldn't find friends, couldn't go out on trails. And for this, I am more than grateful. And I think, for the next years of my life, like mapping will always keep me sane. So thank you for listening, and yeah, please keep in touch.